Call this meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes. Just before we get to that, our last meeting was only able to record in the traditional manner for about 2-3 minutes, and then technology failed us. So there was recorded for posterity.
I downloaded the meeting on my phone, and then I burnt it to a disk, and I have it on file in my office.
Okay. But as always, the minutes are the official record of the
Right.
planning board's proceedings, which we are going to look to approve now. All right. So this is the meeting for July 17th, 2023. It's called to order at 7 p.m. We did have a discussion and public hearing on the File accessory apartment. So we did enter a recess to try and resolve the issue. Like I said, it couldn't be resolved, but the meeting did resume. That public hearing was held and continued until tonight. And then we did approve 2 resolutions, one for Dover Estates subdivision, one for Rusciano erosion sediment control. And you can see those here. And then we approved releasing a resolution authorizing release of planning board escrows, which was approved. And then we did have a discussion regarding the town of Dover town board's proposal for a solar law. And we sent forward our comments to the town board for that. And you can see those here. And then we adjourned the meeting at 8:50. All right, so any questions, comments about the minutes? Okay, need a motion to approve the minutes. Motion made by Member Villano, seconded by Member Sador. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Okay, that approval is 6-0 with 1 absence. All right, now we're on to the continued public hearing for File accessory apartment. We'll have a brief presentation discussion before that is continued, and we'll hear from their consultant.
Alrighty. So again, Peter Sander from Rennie Engineering, representing the applicant John Fila for his accessory apartment on 72 Rama Road. Basically, nothing has really changed all that much since the last time we were discussing this before the board. What we did do is we updated the site plan to show the exact locations of the proposed septic systems. Because before we were proposing to reuse the existing septic for the accessory apartment, that didn't work, so we designed a new system and had to get that shown on the plan. Other than that, now it's shown, and now one of the other major concerns was the amount of disturbance, which is also shown at 0.19 or 0.2 acres of disturbance, which does not trigger either the erosion control permit or the SWIP requirement. Just to give an update, we have not heard back from the Dutchess County Department of Health on this matter. Knowing who's reviewing the town of Dover applications, it may be some time. Which is why I would like to also request as part of this opening that we do close the public hearing on this. Any modifications that the health department may request would be minor and really wouldn't be reflected in the site plan in general. So I don't think it's really necessary for us to keep rehashing such a minor issue for the public's benefit, because we've been here twice and no public is here. So with these minor changes, I respectfully request we close the public hearing tonight and maybe make a contingent approval upon Dutchess County Health Department approval. And that's all I got for Philo.
Okay, thank you. Any members of the planning board have any questions, comments? No. All right, let's start with engineer Berger.
I have no comments.
Okay, just, I guess the question for you then, I mean, given what Mr. Sanders said, does that track with
I agree.
your thinking of Dutchess County planning in terms of, not Dutchess County Health in terms of the, they're not going to really change much, if
No.
anything?
They designed sound, so it's just going to be notes or minor issues of how to construct it. And there won't be any real change in it.
Okay,
And it's typically what happens during the review process is add this note, change this note, add some conditions, but the design itself is sound. I don't see any changes occurring at the health department for that.
okay. Thank you, Engineer Berger. Planner Werner, anything regarding
The only
planning?
leftover comment from last memo was just a request on the bulk table, just to clarify that you're complying with the square footage requirement. It wasn't a big deal, but that wasn't addressed on this revised drawing, so that was number 3 on the comment memo. As far as closing the hearing and having an approval, a conditional approval, I don't know if that's, we have a
I'll
resolution
go
ready?
to, we'll go to Attorney Lessig for that, but
Okay.
anything else on planning?
Anything else for me?
Okay, thank you. Attorney Lessig?
Good evening, everybody. So, yeah, my one comment, of course, would be in response to the ask made here tonight by the applicant. We don't know, of course, what Dutchess County Health is going to come back and say, when they're going to come back and say it. My recommendation would be to continue the public hearing, obviously, to another date, as stated. The public hasn't been nearly engaged in this one as some of our past public hearings. It's certainly possible in the future if we got Dutchess County Health and their comments in the future, they were somewhat small, to simply close the public hearing and have a resolution to approve at a future night, all on the same night. The one, obviously, it's for the board to make this decision. I'm just here to advise. The one thing to keep in mind is, of course, if we do close it now or at some point in the future, the 62 days in which to make a decision begins to run. As mentioned, it is possible to do a contingent approval. It's approved so long as Dutchess County Health comes back and approves what is on the site plan. But of course, you've already approved at that point. You're not going to get another sort of bite at the apple, so to speak. So obviously, I'm here to help, whatever the board wants to do. My advice is, unfortunately, for the applicant, however, just let's be patient. Let's see what they come back with. Let's make sure that the septic is going to be sufficient, that's being put in here in the future, and Dutchess County Health is happy with it, and we can sew this up at a future night.
Okay.
The just interject real quick.
Not just yet. So, just, do we need to continue a public hearing to a date and time certain? I mean, I think I already know the answer, but.
You do, if you want to keep from having to send out the notices again and go through
Right.
all of the hoops again, because technically this is still the public hearing we opened the very first night.
Sure.
And we've just
Continue.
informed the public each night that we're going to adjourn it, the same public hearing to this night, for example. That's under the law appropriate. Yeah. To adjourn the public hearing tonight, you'd have to pick a certain date, 7 p.m., one of the next meeting dates. We could adjourn indefinitely, just to whenever Dutchess County Health got back to us. But then at that point, it'd come out of the applicant's escrow, I think. We'd have to put it in the newspaper again, post it on the bulletin board again, and essentially renotice it from scratch again. So it's, again, a decision for the board to make. But
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to say that we've, much larger projects have been approved with contingent upon health department approval. I believe even the original 3185 was a contingent upon health department approval project. So I really don't see any benefit keeping the public hearing open and spending the applicant's money with my time and potential escrow costs. So again, I just think it's just not necessary for this project.
All right. Any members of the planning board have any comments or questions based on what our consultants have said at this time? I go back to Engineer Berger. I mean, is this a relatively minor thing that we have a public hearing because we have to have a public hearing, but other municipalities might not have a public hearing about this?
Well, this is typically, other municipalities do have public hearings, but
Okay.
they would treat it with a contingent for, health department approval typically.
Okay.
Something on as simple design as this,
Right.
because there's plenty of room. The design, it's just the timing it takes for Dover to get a review because of manpower at the health department.
Sure.
That's really the situation here.
Right.
And that's occurring.
Which is what the applicant's consultant alluded to.
And that's
Sure.
occurring actually in other towns, so
Right.
other towns are experiencing the same requests for conditional approvals, and they are going through because of holding things up just to get back that approval, which typically takes a long time.
Right.
And if it was a tight septic where it could actually change something, I could see that, but in this case, I don't see any changes in the septic design, to be honest. I don't see anything coming back from the health department other than, can you add this note, or just come back, it's okay,
Right.
which is, in the history of the health department, is rare. Typically, you come back with some language change, and that's about it. Note change, language change, construction, sequence change, but not design change.
Okay. Does any member of the planning board object to closing the public hearing this evening? Okay. We would first actually need to vote to continue it and then close it, but
idea.
I did remember that part. So let's get to that, and then we can maybe revisit the next part of this. So, all right, I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing for the Phyla accessory apartment, seconded by member Rahman. All those in favor say aye. Aye. This public hearing is now continued. Any members of the public wishing to speak at this public hearing for the Phyla accessory apartment, please come to the podium at this time. All right, seeing no one approaching the podium, I'll make a motion that we close this public hearing. Seconded by
Second.
member Sador. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of closing this public hearing say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. Okay, the vote is 6-0 with one absence. Okay, this public hearing is now closed. All right, now on to the next issue of contingent approval. Planner Werner, did you say there was something that needed to be fixed on the plans?
It was a minor comment on the bulk table about, they are complying with the minimum floor area required. They're below the maximum, actually, 1,000
Okay.
square feet. I just thought they could show that, proposed versus what's required, just to tighten up the site plan a little bit.
All
But
right.
on the issue of the septic, I just thought, my recollection was from the beginning of talking about this application was because of the violation that was on file with the
Mhm.
town. Having language in it about getting DOH approval, I thought that's what was making us be a little more conservative on this one. Maybe
Okay.
defer to Andrew on that, but I thought that was, because I'm looking at the copy of the violation that we got, including some noticing, court appearance tickets and other things about, specifically reference getting septic approval, so.
Mhm. Okay.
if that's,
And we gave the public an option to come and speak about it. If anybody was so concerned, they could have come or written a letter or something, so.
I believe
Engineer Berger?
the application and the going to process is curing that. That was a system that was failed.
Right.
They did try to show that the existing system was actually working. They were unsuccessful and then moved on to replacing it.
Just
And that's-
replacing it.
And that's the typical process you go through.
Right.
With the hearing at the health department. So that's, I don't know if it's any more different than if we were going to a brand-new building.
Right.
And putting a new septic in at this point, because it is a brand new, it'd be different if we were trying to get the health department to accept the existing system, and they had not yet done that. That would be
Sure.
where we were before.
Right.
And that probably should have waited till you get that actual. But the second they moved from trying to get the existing approved to a brand-new system with expansion and all that stuff. They basically are saying the old one's gone, we're building a brand-new one.
Right.
It's the same as if this was a new building with the new system, and the way I see it.
Okay. All right. So you don't anticipate that the Department of Health is going to get back to you in the next 2 weeks, right? Okay. And there is something to fix on this, correct?
Yeah, I think I'll just add a note, right? That should
Sure.
work.
Yeah, the comment's pretty clear about what you can
Yeah.
do, so.
Okay.
I can make that in for the next submission too.
Right.
So,
Okay. So does any member of the planning board have any objection to, at our meeting 2 weeks from now, that we extend the deadline for them to even next Friday? It's one note, like you already, and you said what the
Yeah.
note should be. So as long as you submit this before, by Wednesday of next week or something,
okay.
just what it needs to be. I mean, is there any member of the planning board have any objection to considering that at their meeting on the 21st?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So, we still would need to convene and vote on the 21st, but I think you know what you need to do. I don't even know if you need to show up for this on the 21st, if it's just the paper approval, but.
I mean, yeah, I can have a resolution prepared well in advance, obviously, if we
Yeah.
get the minor correction here made well in advance. And just to note, Chairman, my friend Aaron here reminded me, the current, how this came in front of us was obviously citations from our local building inspector here.
Right.
There is a current violation on here. The violation has to be cleared up by, it's required right now that they obtain planning board approval and documentation of the septic system being signed off by Board of Health. So they cannot fix that and lift that without getting the okay from us and Department of Health. So
Right.
obviously, we've got to take the first crack here. And
Right.
they're going to have another authority looking over their shoulder, of course, to make sure that both
Right.
ourselves and Department of Health.
And the
are okay.
violation with the town is only cured by actually creating the new septic system and the Department of Health finally signing off on it, right, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So,
It would have to be installed even before the health department will sign off,
got it. Okay.
correct?
I think so.
I understand your violation. You have to have a new system in.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just getting it approved, if you never build it,
Right, you got to build it, and it's got, that's what I'm saying. Right.
you're gonna be, still be here before.
Yeah.
hearing.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. Any member of the planning board have anything further regarding this application? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sander.
And that's the August 21st meeting, correct?
Yes. So it was, if you could just, have that corrected, whenever, this week or by Wednesday of next week. Okay, just as long as it's just sufficient, time for, the planning board secretary to, disseminate it to the consultants and the,
Right.
thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is new business, 3185 Route 22, MCC Holdings LLC.
Good to go.
Sure.
Alrighty. Back again, Peter Sander, Rennie Engineering, representing Mike Orfici. Here to rediscuss the 3185 Route 22 project. We're calling it the amended site plan because it differs from the original site plan that was approved in 2020. The site is a hamlet mixed-use parcel located on 1.995 acres. The original approval that we obtained in 2020 was for 8 dwelling units, a 53-seat restaurant, and a commercial component. So the idea was that these structures were each going to have 4 dwelling units each. Perfect. Right, is this the old one?
This is what I just clicked on, that was in the file.
Sorry.
That's the
That's the new one.
So the idea was that these structures were each going to have 4 dwelling units each, and that this building was going to have a restaurant with configurable commercial storefronts that could be used for a variety of commercial purposes. We're now proposing to do a total of 17 units in total, rather than the original 8. So that those 17 units come from now 6 dwelling units in these structures, just from a reconfiguration of the bedroom units that we had in there initially. And then 4 dwelling units in here, and then 1 accessory apartment. And that will be located on the 2nd story of the structure. The 1st story will no longer have a restaurant component. It's just going to be comprised of commercial units, which is generally less septic. That's why we're able to do it and able to squeeze the units in. Because the structure was going to use the original septic system, so the health department, I reviewed all that and accepted it. But now that we're axing the restaurant portion of it, we have additional flow capacity for the additional dwelling units.
Okay.
So overall, this project hasn't changed all that much layout-wise. The very simple modifications that we were doing was that we slid the residential structures further up so we can make room for an additional lateral to accommodate the additional bedrooms that are going to the structure.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, an additional what?
Septic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not a lateral. So the idea, you have to maintain a certain distance between structure and lateral. So we had to slide the structure up in order to maintain that distance. So the idea is that we've slid it up an additional 5 feet from the original. So side yard setbacks allowed to 10, but it can be brought down to 0 because it's a hamlet area. You want denser areas in the hamlet. You want higher residential components. So that's why that provision is in there. And overall, we've reviewed the comments. We don't have too many additional comments. We do believe that our density counts are compliant and do meet the code. But I'd love to hear more from the consultants on this, unless Mike has anything else to say.
No, same thing, going to hear back from consultants and their interpretation of it. I mean, our view of
Could
it,
you
reading the code.
You gotta come to the
please
microphone,
speak
please.
into the mic?
Our interpretation of it from viewing the code was kind of clear on the density.
Mhm.
So we're just wondering where your interpretation comes from so that we can better clarify it. So.
Okay.
Want me to start?
So we'll start off with the planning board first. And so you're going from, again, it was 4 and 4
Yeah.
residential units to now 6, 6, and then
4 and 1.
5 more?
4 and 1.
4 and 1. Okay, so how's it an accessory apartment separated from the other apartments?
Town code says that it could be part of the same principal structure.
No, I'm just looking at the site plan and I'm trying to understand like how it's, so there's 4 apartments on the 2nd floor of that building, but then there's another apartment?
Yeah, there's 5 total. So
Okay,
we're calling one the accessory apartment.
Right.
It's allowed to be right, and it's not counted towards the density calculation.
okay.
And that's strictly for a mixed-use commercial development. It says accessory apartments are allowed above those uses.
Right.
As of right. So that's where it does not contribute to the density calculation. So that's where that's coming from.
Okay. All right. So then, just looking at the parking, so there's 8, so you're proposing 8 units on the left side, just to make it simple.
Yep.
And there is 11 non-handicap parking spots?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And we feel that's sufficient for 8 apartments?
Well, we have the additional reserve parking down here.
Right. So that could be for the
So I
2 buildings on the left, or for the 4 that are on the commercial space and the accessory apartment.
Yeah,
Correct.
Okay. So then,
In total, I think there was 53 parking spots in total,
okay,
right?
I think
51.
it's
51.
51?
Yeah.
One
All right.
more than last time.
one more than last time.
But the
But with-
commercial, this
Well,
commercial
without
use
the
is,
restaurant, and I'm not required to have as many.
Yeah.
Because there's no restaurant.
Sure, okay. And what sort of commercial operation or operations do you anticipate in the space?
Whatever the town really needs, really. I have no personal use of it right now.
Okay.
You know, it's just to build out nice spaces.
Oh, I see. It's not like you're like, this will be built and we already have somebody sliding
Well, we
in.
have some ideas, but
Okay.
no, to answer the question, that's why they're pretty open spaces to be built out as it needs to be.
Okay. And I think in the last plan, you had worked out kind of having some kind of directional arrows to make the site more
So.
kind of, have a flow to it.
Yeah, one of the comments in here was, we'll say missing paperwork, something like that. Nothing has changed from the original submission. We just want to bombard you with a stack of everything. We kind of kept it prudent to the difference, and it's easy to kind of put that back in to go forward. Your
Okay.
Landscaping plan, the stormwater management plan, all that other stuff, all that core stuff around here. Even the lighting fixtures for the parking lot are not changing.
Okay.
So.
All right, that's all I have at this time. Let's go through the members of the planning board and Member Sador, any comments or questions?
Nope.
Member Lorberdier?
Did I miss something, or did you already, I'm not seeing any floor plans to show how the building's changed.
I don't believe that's required for planning board on this side of things, just strictly site plan. I believe they're still in development.
Oh, I see, okay.
I mean, the shapes of the buildings haven't changed from the original approval. I mean, besides the building number one has a second story. We also shrunk the roof line to not really shoot up past the original approval.
Okay.
So
All
we
right.
can provide drawings for the buildings if you want.
I'm just curious.
If
The
it's-
paper your file gets bigger.
Yeah.
We're just trying to.
Sure, I mean, obvious,
I will say that, compared to the old design, are more ADA compliant now than we were before. We look for ADA apartments. We have more than required.
right,
So we are trying to build in the right direction,
sure,
you know.
okay. Yeah, I mean, you just need to obviously submit whatever's required.
Yeah.
But I could foresee, at least with the mixture of commercial and residential, just having an understanding of where the public accesses are to the commercial space and the private access to the residential space, so. All right, Member Little Badir, anything further at this time?
No, looks, just happy to see it come back.
We're excited
Yeah.
to break ground. on that.
Okay.
I know you guys have a process and, it takes time and there's boxes you gotta check. And I know it's a thankless job you guys are doing. I mean, public service here. Yeah, but, I grew up in Dover, so I'm back and I'm really looking to do a lot of stuff here. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but Jordan Lane around the corner, I'm the one who finally purchased that development, built it out over the last couple of years, brought that back. We got a lot of other projects on the back burner, so I'm hoping we'll grow our relationship together. I really enjoy the town, and I believe that you have something here and it can be something. But you need that catalyst, you need that first group to come in and put the investment up front. The family that originally had this all laid out, unfortunately, couldn't get the financial backing. It takes a bit of risk there on someone who actually believes and the know-how to make it viable.
Sure.
That's who I am, and that's why I'm passionate about it and hoping that there's a little give and take here to help move this along, the best we can. So.
Great.
And you can see my relationship with the building department. I build my stuff. I really do. Your lane. I don't build on the line sticks, So.
Okay. Member Holmes?
No questions.
Okay. Member Ramon?
No, nothing further.
Member Villano?
No.
All right. Who'd like to go first? We both pointed to you.
Yeah, so the memo was long, but it was really just to catch up the board on what was approved last time, just to have a tight record, that's all. And there's really only a few issues that I point out. And really, I think, Don was instrumental last time in getting some of the code questions cleared up. So maybe we just do that again this time for a couple of these kind of ambiguous, not totally clear code language when it comes to setbacks and density. So I won't go line by line, but first just to touch on what Val said, this does require ARB approval.
Right.
The residential elevations were provided. That's what you approved last time. You didn't approve floor plans, I don't believe. It was just
I think
elevations.
so. But
Those haven't changed. The commercial elevations obviously changed. They provided those. So you'll be reviewing those as part of this in your ARB responsibilities. Again, I'll defer the erosion SWIP stuff to Joe. That's great if you have the rest of the site plan ready to go and you just wanted to talk about this one preliminary tonight just to see if anything had to change. I get that. I figured that would come later. So that's what that comment number 8 was about. So on the density, yeah, last time we were here on this project, Don had declared that they could get the 8 units per acre based on common water and sewer. So that would give them about 16 allowable units.
Right.
And they're proposing one additional on the commercial mixed-use building and calling it accessory. My only concern is, and I think Andrew can back me up on it, is just that the code isn't really, it doesn't seem like it was written for like a mixed-use type of building, because accessory apartments are usually accessory to a primary dwelling, that in this case you have a bunch of rental units. Which one is the primary? It's hard to say. So like, that's why I was wondering if Don could take a look at that and see if it could be applicable here. And if so, great. If not, then maybe a variance or some other way around it. That's all the comment was about. I'm not trying to lose
Yeah, I
a
mean,
unit. I just think the code wasn't written with this in mind.
Right. Can you just go a little bit further on that? Because I see here you pulled out the language from 145.12.
Yep.
145.12B5.
Yeah, no, we were looking at it right here. So
yeah,
I was
so it's pretty
talking with Planner Werner. So Planner Werner, if you could.
Yeah, so 145.12B5, right?
Yeah.
The states, apartments located above non-residential uses shall be allowed at the same density as multifamily dwelling units, except that for each lot, one apartment not exceeding 1,000 square feet may be located above a non-residential use by right as an accessory apartment pursuant to subsection C below.
That was our confusion when, you responded back. It's pretty clear that on a non-residential use building, I can have an accessory apartment, one that's less than 1,000 square feet.
But then you have to also look at C, like it's related, the code language also refers you to C, right, which states that one accessory apartment per single-family dwelling may be located on an accessory structure or principal building is provided in the use table. So, yeah, I just think it's not clear to me, and, if you want, I already included Don on this memo to get an opinion from him, and he was quick to give some help last time on this project, so it sounds like you have a relationship with him too. I'm sure you talk about it.
We understand what the request, why. We just don't think it's necessary, just for how the code reads. I know it's not the intended purpose is what you believe, but how it reads is that it is permitted.
And they went out of their way to specifically put a line in.
What is an
saying
accessory-
Residential structures are allowed in an accessory apartment.
But what is it accessory to? Like, that's the question.
The commercial units, that's
Yeah, if I just had one apartment up there, would it be, we're saying, if I had a non-residential commercial building, one apartment up there, on that one line, it says I'm allowed to have one accessory apartment.
But you have 5, so it's just,
Well, I'm only calling one accessory, the rest are dwelling units, or active dwelling units, I'm taking account of it.
That's the confusion. What makes the one the accessory and the other 4 not the accessory?
All right,
'Cause it
so-
implies that the accessory apartment is a little different than just one apartment among many,
Yeah, I guess
I would say that it would allow me to make it 560 square feet. Your minimum dwelling size is 800, I can make it a little smaller and fall into that category. The only distinction you put between accessory apartment and dwelling unit is the square footage requirement.
Okay, so it seems like, 'cause this is why I was calling out earlier as to why you have not 7, you have 16 plus 1. So, okay, so your theory of this is that you're allowed to have 8 per acre, ergo 16. Okay, then the 145-12B allows you to have 1. Okay, apartments located above non-residential uses, which is a non-residential use, shall be allowed at the same density as multifamily dwelling units, except that for each lot, one apartment not exceeding 1,000 square feet may be located above a non-residential use by right as an accessory apartment, pursuant to subsection C below. But then subsection C doesn't really get at it? Like, is that what we're saying? Like,
It's very
the
confusing.
residential, for single-family housing.
Right.
It doesn't really pertain too much to commercial mixed-use development, which we believe that's what
I think with
B5 does.
Well, I mean, I guess, one reading of this, which you might not,
further, sorry.
one reading of this, which you may not like, is that you can have your accessory apartment, it needs to be in an accessory structure, ergo not part of,
Further on the code, it distinguishes that it can be in a primary structure. It doesn't have to be a separate structure for an auxiliary apartment.
who wrote this thing?
Yeah,
I may go back to 12C.
hold on.
I know it's talking about single-family dwellings, but I think what they're saying when it's, in 12B5, it's really talking about the accessory permit shall not count as purpose of density, and no permit shall be granted for such permit without approval of the Board of Health. I think that's more what they're subjecting that other code to. I don't get it by right without Board of Health and without approval.
Okay, so
Attorney Wesson.
if I can interject, yeah. Well, listen, at the end of the day, it's not worth getting too deep into this. The thing is just, Aaron and myself looked at this and we're confused ourselves.
Right.
It's up to Dawn to be the interpreter of this, and if the applicants get an interpretation they don't like, they can take that to the ZBA, either for the variance or for a reinterpretation. We just are, in what I've, not to jump too far ahead, drafted for a resolution tonight for seeker purposes and other things, are asking the applicants to get Dawn to weigh in on this, just because I'm not sure that this is a question we've come across before, not with this project, not with any past project. So what does this mean? We can talk about this all night. Really, it's got to be the ZBA and Dawn who figure this out. And if they say what they're proposing is great, A-OK, that's the answer.
Okay. I think we're still on planner, Werner.
Yeah, so then related to that, same looping in Don, is the setback on the northern, what is it, building 3 in the back?
Yes.
So again, like, are you saying this is calling this a party wall building?
No, there's a difference between a party wall building and a zero lot line. Lot.
Right.
Those are two separate things.
Mhm.
Party wall is carrying a
I'm aware.
common wall.
Yep.
Zero lot line built on.
Up against it, right, in this case, there isn't, your neighbor doesn't have a zero lot line condition.
This condition doesn't affect.
But I think the intent of, the way my reading of, and my understanding of the Hamlet zoning is that they want to allow a zero lot line situation to, in a traditional Hamlet setting where you have commercial buildings right up against each other, I get that. Party wall, is a situation where you have, maybe like a Stony Brook Estates with each one of those lots is its own condo lot with each unit up against itself, and it's a party wall separating them, a firewall of, concrete between the units. The code also says maybe 0. It doesn't say maybe less than 10 or, it specifically says maybe 0. In this case, you're proposing 5. So there's 2 issues with it, really, that I have. It's like, is it really applicable here, given that you're not 0?
So,
Well,
so,
solid to put it at zero, we were just. I'll move it over to zero.
So that, again, that's another thing I'm going to recommend and ask, the board to consider, asking the applicants to get, our zoning enforcement guy to weigh in on and interpret. And again, either go for the variance or go to the ZBA if, yeah.
Alternatively, there's a comment in there, and Joe can weigh in on that, is that you can maybe get the waiver on the separation distance on the septic.
It's tight. It's real tight. We pretty much designed that system to the maximum capacity that site can hold. So I don't think.
No, waiver on the distance, right? Can you do that?
Just wave on the distance.
Not the capacity.
I think Kevin and Rich attempted to get waivers on the first round of approvals that we were getting. I think they had some difficulties and pushback from them.
Really can't deny you on that.
You don't think so?
They've granted waivers for that setback between, unless you have a basement.
No, these are basements.
These are basement?
Yes.
Well, that's the difference, okay.
Okay.
You will get pushback for basement.
Yeah.
I concur with that.
All right. Well,
I thought they
so
were allowed by
can-
grade.
no, this is
It's like mechanical.
This is a good project. I liked it last time I was around. I think it's great for this part of the town, like more housing. It's awesome. It's just the code is not,
We're leasing right now.
that's the thing. The
I'm not trying to
code,
be difficult.
no, it's just the code isn't up to date on these kind of things.
No, and I totally get that. I'm just trying
So-
to start the process and.
Sure.
Big thing to
And-
consider, I know we're asking for 17 apartments, part of that is the financial numbers behind it. To cut these apartments down means this project doesn't happen. I'll be blunt. You know, there's a financial crossroad there. It has to happen, otherwise the investment's not worth it. That's what the original family had, right? That's why it never got off the ground, they never got the funding for it. So there's a big chunk there too that said, hey, I know I'm packing the max in, but we need the max, otherwise the investment's not there.
Understood.
I mean, you're going to be back anyway. Between now and the next time you're here, we could facilitate this talk with, I can even reach out to Don and make sure he gets this prioritized so that he gets us feedback. That's how we did it last time. It was pretty easy.
So-
Again,
Yeah.
our hesitation is we don't want to request interpretations on things that don't need interpretations. If the risk is that he denies it for something that doesn't need to be denied. You know what I mean? It's really just kind of protecting the applicant's rights on this, that
I get it.
if we don't need an interpretation, we don't want to go get one.
So Planner Warner or Attorney Lessig, can give a clear definition just of a zero lot line building?
We don't have any in our code.
There's really not,
New York, I can tell you New York City's clear.
yeah.
Right.
Well,
So
if you look at,
Planner Werner or Attorney Lessig, can you give us a definition of zero lot line building? Those are our consultants. We're asking them what they
that's the
can
thing,
tell us.
party wall and zero lot line are both not defined in definitions of your code, even though it's in
Right.
that footnote.
So then
in
what would be
tables.
the common definition?
Well, that's something we'd have to argue about or look into, because the law that comes out of the Saratoga case from 30 years ago basically says if we don't have a definition in our local law, we've got to go with what the common usage is. So, again, I'm not sure exactly if there is a common usage for zero lot line building. It's not a phrase I use terribly much.
Sure.
Even in my practice. Maybe, Aaron, you do a little more.
A
But
traditional village setting where you have commercial buildings right up against each other, and the buildings are two different architectural styles, but they might have that, they're right up against each other. That's a
Okay.
zero lot line condition. The hamlet of Dover Plains doesn't have that setting, it's pretty spread out.
Right. But the minimum side yard setback does allow for
A zero
Zero.
lot line, yes.
Okay. And I think what the applicant was maybe trying to argue earlier was it's not their fault that their neighbor doesn't have a building up against the lot line, that then they can't have a building up against the lot line, right? I mean, is that,
Right, but I think it also says, the way the language in the footnote reads is may be zero for party wall or zero lot line buildings.
right. So what they're saying is, we're
Wanna
proposing
call
a
this-
zero lot line building
wanna call
5
this a
feet from
zero-
the lot line? I mean, so I guess if it's not zero, it has to be
Lot
10?
line.
Is that what it's, I mean, that seems odd.
I mean, again, this is...
So again, we're not going to figure that out tonight, but, okay.
I'm going to go home and measure how much space is between the bank, the old bank, and Eddie and Vicky's.
I mean, there are quite a few buildings, I think. I mean, there's some buildings in this town that are over lot lines in other people's lots, so,
Yeah.
okay. So between now and whenever, someone can give us kind of more clarification on this.
Yeah, again, in the resolution I've written, we're asking the applicants, and again, this can be edited by the board if wanted, but we'd be asking the applicants to get this clarified, if possible, because, again, it's not, we're asking for clarification on a footnote in the table of uses that's itself an appendix to the zoning code. It's pretty minute, you know.
Sure.
Subject to interpretation.
Okay,
Okay.
I continue?
Yes, please.
Okay, the only other thing on the site plan itself is just the parking on the phasing. And it's an easy fix, I think. Basically, just for the board's benefit. Can you bring up the plan again, Chairman?
Sure.
In the upper right corner, there's a phasing plan. So they're proposing to do the entrance and the back residential buildings as phase one, and that parking lot that's next to those buildings is included, but it doesn't have enough parking for 12 units. So recommendation is, include another area of parking maybe on the south side there as part of phase one.
Right, because it's 12 units with 11 plus 2 parking spots.
Right, and it needs, based on the 1.5, it's in the comment. Hold on. Buildings 2 and 3 require 18, but only 13 are shown for that adjacent lot that's there. So they need 5 more.
And then sometimes a concern that comes up with phasing is you do phase one, which is potentially a profitable phase for you, and then you're like, yeah, we'll get to phase two, and then you never do. So,
I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but the whole plan is to do the two back buildings and work our way out, and then immediately go into building, building number one. We're breaking out into two phases just so the tenants and residents can have access and have the road in while we build. I mean, so extending phase one, back buildings to include more parking spots, no problem, totally makes sense, and we have every reason and purpose, and we're privately funding this, and I'm prepared to do both phases. So,
okay.
and this will be owned by me personally and my family. So it's not something we're building and selling out and leaving. I plan to retain this that's why it's under MCZ Holdings, which are my children's names. So it's something we keep in the family when I buy these properties. So.
Okay. All right. Anything further, Planner?
No, just on seeker, we could talk about that real quick. So it's really, again, very similar to the last project. When we reviewed it, just to refresh everyone's memory, and I know Member Holmes wasn't on the board. I had asked that the EAF analyze the project against what used to be there before the fire. And they did that again here with this plan, so I think that's fine. It shows the delta between the uses and, the number of units changing, the commercial floor area that changes. And it's not, again, I think a neg deck is appropriate here. They use the proper form. I just call out just reminding the board of the issues that we talked about last time around. The one that really wasn't an issue was the timber rattlesnake flag and the EAF. I think we are all comfortable to conclude that this site doesn't have habitat. So, again, we'll go through the process. We do have a recommendation to just reclassify this as unlisted, circulate again, since the project did change, it's a different applicant. So we have I think Andrew has a resolution that has typing it as unlisted and coordinated review to be circulated to several agencies that are listed, just like last time. So that's part of the recommendations. DEC, DOT, Dutchess County Health, Fire Company, the Water Company, and the ZBA was also listed. Just Victoria's recommendation was to include them, just so they're aware that they might have to get it.
Okay.
Depending on Don's.
I was going to ask if it was you see that there is a need for a variance,
No,
or
we don't know yet.
Okay.
Yeah. We also recommended the escrow to be increased to 5,000, just to cover the several meetings that this will probably be on.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Planner Warner. Attorney Lessig?
Oh, I'm sorry. Aaron's hit it pretty well so far. Again, we're asking for some of those new interpretations to be made, just to take a look at that. The interpretations that were made, I've mentioned in here already about the parking on the side, the interpretation of the common sewers being common sewers, even though they're not technically sewers, it's a septic field. Certainly I have no expectation that Don would change his previous interpretation, but we are just asking him to re-up what he said before, just to confirm that what he said for the previous rendition of this plan would apply to this plan as well. The parking can be on the side of the building. Reading the code, it's a little unclear if it has to all be in the rear, or if it can be in the side and the rear here, or there's multiple buildings and stuff. That was an issue that came up in the past rendition of this. As Planner Warner noted as well, there's a couple of interested involved agencies. Victoria and I thought it would be appropriate to circulate this to for seeker. For one, the J.H. Ketchum Hose Company, basically the local, provider of fire services, I'm sure you know. Especially since that front building now has gone from 1 to 2 stories, just getting them to take a look at that and say, yes, we can, with the equipment we have, if there were, God forbid, to be a fire or something, it's something we'd be able to handle. If not, we'll have to cross that bridge and talk to them a little more about that. Dover Plains Water Company, that's my recommendation. Okay. we just want to make sure that, have something in the record, because there's an adjacent property to yours where that became a huge issue, was actually getting water service to something that was being.
Yeah, I think the main sticking point there was originally, maybe through a handshake deal, they were allowed to come in through the back, essentially, yeah, because there was a bordering property. This is not a bordering property to the Dover Plains Water Company,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
It's
and-
going to just come across Route 22 or up, or maybe it's already across Route 22 at that point.
No, but I've had the meetings, we've had site visits.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're actually in the process of pulling permits to bring my, proper mains in, because the building's fully sprinkled now.
Right.
So,
Okay,
the
Okay.
existing
great.
valve there doesn't work, so.
Yeah, we just want something on the record to show that too, because obviously there's going to be a lot of people there, a lot of water usage. We want to make sure too that they are able to give you all the water that you're going to need and your residents and everything are going to need. And then, of course, the rest are pretty self-explanatory. Department of Transportation, you're on 22 there. You're using the curb cuts that are already there. I know, very smart move, but we have to get DOT to okay the amount of traffic you're going to have using those curb cuts. Probably won't be enough to require signalization, but they still need to say yes to that. And then Dutchess County Behavioral Community Health, obviously, it's the septic, the sewer, just like with the application before you a few minutes ago. So any questions the board has about the resolution as prepared, I can walk you through it, but it is a little longer than it would typically be for this, just because we're referring back to that 2020 project when we did already look at this. There's something very substantially similar to this, some of the interpretations that were already made, some of the findings that were already made, and of course some of the changes and why some new information is needed as well.
Can I just add one thing on the traffic issue or the
Sure.
DOT involvement? So they need a highway work permit. They needed one for the last one. That was a condition of approval on the original, right? So I don't know if they're going to necessarily weigh in. They might not respond. Like I don't think they responded on the first for seeker. But if they
Yeah.
do, by chance, I can already say that this project's not going to require a traffic study. I don't think the planning board needs to ask for one. Again, it's just, are they okay with the access points and the driveway permit that they need to get?
And one more thing, if I can throw this in as well. Sometimes at this point, we'd refer to county planning at this point. There's some more sheets we want to get, I think some more changes, obviously, that Mr. Warner suggested and stuff. A little later on down the line, we'll refer to county planning, where I'm proposing to get seekers started tonight, if the board is amenable to that. That's obviously longer than the 30 days that county planning has in which to respond. So hopefully, with a future set of submissions here, we can refer to county planning at some point in the future. Obviously, we'll recommend when the appropriate time comes for that.
Okay. Any consultants have anything further? Okay. Any members of the planning board have anything further to ask or comment on based on our consultants' comments, questions? Okay. All right. Did you have anything else to add, sir? Okay. All right, so we have a resolution classifying the action and declaring intent to serve as lead agency. Attorney Lessig, is there anything that needs to change this resolution before I read it?
Anything that I need to change?
Or anything that needs to be changed?
Obviously, this belongs to the board. If the board
Right.
feels something needs to be changed, we can. I believe Victoria...
Based on the conversation we just had last
No,
half
no.
hour.
Unless, of course, the board does want to remove some of those requirements that some things be interpreted and some of the past interpretations just be reaffirmed. Obviously, I'm here to answer any questions and massage any language if, while reading through this, we find anything that we do want to change, though.
Okay. All right, let me read this out, make a motion, second it, and then if there needs to be a discussion, we'll have a discussion. Resolution classifying the action, declaring intent to serve as lead agency, 3185 Route 22, MCC Holdings LLC. Whereas the applicant MCC Holdings LLC has submitted an application for site plan, erosion and sediment control permit, and architectural review board approval to redevelop a former mixed-use commercial and residential site, which was destroyed in 2018 by a fire, with one mixed-use commercial and multifamily residential building and two multifamily residential buildings, collectively known as the project, on property located at 3185 Route 22, tax parcel number 7063-10-456544, known as the project site, which is located within the Hamlet Mixed-Use Zoning District, or HM District. And whereas in the HM District, multifamily dwellings, upper floor apartments in mixed-use buildings, offices, retail businesses, and service businesses are all permitted by right, subject to site plan review by the planning board. And whereas the project is depicted on a site plan entitled 3185 Route 22 amended site plan, sheet number 2 of 9, prepared by Rennie Engineering Design, PLLC, dated July 19, 2023, known as the site plan. And whereas the applicant has submitted a short environmental assessment form, or SEAF, dated July 11, 2023, pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, also known as SECRA, and whereas in accordance with SECRA, the planning board is required to determine the classification of the proposed action, and whereas the project site is located within 500 feet of New York State Route 22, and whereas on August 3, 2020, the planning board reviewed and approved a substantially similar project at the same project site, referred to here as the 2020 project. And whereas on May 18, 2020, the planning board classified the 2020 project as an unlisted action pursuant to SECRA and served as lead agency for the purposes of the coordinated review, culminating in the adopting of a negative declaration for the 2020 project on August 3, 2020, finding it would not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts and that an environmental impact statement would not be prepared. And whereas the planning board of the town of Dover has performed a preliminary review of the SEAF and other application materials submitted for the project now before the board, and whereas the 2020 project proposed to reuse an existing septic system and to add additional septic capacity, which was interpreted by the code enforcement officer, or CEO, in a letter dated January 27, 2020, to meet the definition of, quote, common sewer, end quote, for the purposes of meeting the requirements for additional density pursuant to Town of Dover Code 145-12, subsection B, subsection 3, and whereas the proposed, and whereas the project proposes a substantially similar reuse and expansion of the existing septic system at the proposed site, and the board wishes for the CEO to review and reaffirm that this previous determination is still a proper interpretation of the applicable Town of Dover Code. And whereas the 2020 project proposed to place parking for the development to the side and rear of the principal building at the site and nearest to frontage of the project site along Route 22, and whereas pursuant to Town of Dover Code 145-12, subsection B, subsection 3, new multifamily dwellings in the HR and HM districts are required to have parking behind the buildings or off-site. But whereas 145-38, subsection A, subsection 4, then A, then 1, states that off-street parking shall be located behind or to the side of the principal building, with the incongruity interpreted by the CEO in a letter dated January 27, 2020, who determined 145-38, subsection A 4A1, to properly apply to the principal mixed-use building closest to Route 22, and whereas the current project proposes a substantially similar mixed-use commercial and residential principal building closest to Route 22, with parking proposed along the side and rear of that building, and the board wishes for the CEO to review and reaffirm that his previous determination is still a proper interpretation of the applicable Town of Dover Code. And whereas the project site totals 1.995 acres, even with a common sewer pursuant to Town of Dover Code 145-12, subsection B, subsection 3, the project would only be permitted up to 16 dwelling units, and whereas the applicant is proposing 17 dwelling units, citing Town of Dover Code 145-12, subsection B5, and 145-12, subsection C, as those provisions of the town code provide for accessory apartments as of right in certain circumstances. And whereas the applicant has characterized the additional dwelling unit as an accessory apartment, accessory to the commercial uses proposed for the project site, which is a novel application of the town code and one for which an interpretation from the CEO is necessary as to its appropriateness. And whereas the project proposes a residential building towards the rear of the project site, which is just 5 feet from the northern property line, delineating the project site from the property of Four Brothers Pizza, Inc., while Town of Dover Code 145-11 subsection B provides for a 10-foot side yard setback from the lot lines for all development within the HM district, with the additional caveat provided in a footnote that the setback may be 0 for party wall or 0 lot line buildings. And whereas the applicant has characterized the two-story, 8-dwelling unit buildings proposed at the rear of the project site as being party wall or 0 lot line buildings, as the dwelling units within them would be separated by common internal walls and have no lot line between them, but which do not otherwise connect to adjacent structures on the same lot or an adjacent lot, which is a novel application of the town code and one for which interpretation from the CEO is necessary as to its appropriateness. Now therefore be it resolved by the planning board of the town of Dover as follows. 1, the project is an unlisted action pursuant to SECRA. 2, the planning board declares its intent to serve as SECRA lead agency and directs its secretary to circulate notice of its intent to serve as lead agency to all involved and interested agencies. 3, the planning board directs the applicant to seek from the CEO an interpretation of the application of sections 145-12 subsection B3, 145-12 subsection B5, 145-12 subsection C, 145-11 subsection B, and 145-38 subsection A4A1 to the project regarding density, parking, and setbacks as noted in the whereas sections above, for which the CEO's determination is required, and to provide the result of the same to the board. This resolution is being offered by
So moved.
Chairman, if I
Member Sador.
may,
Yes.
I have to correct my answer from earlier. I did find one Scrivener's error on my part here. In that last whereas, the applicant has characterized the two-story, 8-dwelling unit buildings proposed at the rear of the project site.
It's
There's
just the north building? Or
There's 6 dwelling unit buildings.
Six
'cause
dwelling.
some of those apartments are in that front primary one, but the ones in the back are 6.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I
Cubed.
guess while we're just looking at this, it's really just the one building that's being proposed as a 0 lot line, right? Not the,
Yeah, building number 2 there, the one in the rear along the Four Brothers property line.
so we'll say the northern 2-story, 6-dwelling unit building proposed at the rear of the project site as being party wall or 0 lot line. A party wall or 0 lot line building, as the dwelling units within it would be separated by common internal walls and have no lot line between it and but which do not otherwise connect to adjacent structures on the same lot or an adjacent lot. Okay.
No lot line between it,
Well, that's what I'm trying to understand.
between
So
those.
still them? Okay. Thank you. Anything further? Anything to adjust here before we want to just read it again?
The applicant has carried a 2-story, 2-dwelling unit building proposed at the rear. What do you mean? Between it and the adjacent property. We still have that them, which is plural, and it was
Right, so
singular
it's
before.
it and the adjacent property.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't the them being the dwelling units.
Well, again, that's part of the clarity here. Is
Okay.
it the dwelling units within the building, or is it the adjacent property altogether or something? But
Right.
I think we had a motion and a second before.
Well, someone did motion and I didn't accept it yet, so.
Yeah,
Is there anything else that needs to change before, because then it just becomes more messy.
right.
Anybody else see anything else wrong with this? All right. This resolution being offered by
So moved.
Member Sador, seconded by Member Villano. Discussion. Okay, is there anything, does any member of the planning board see anything that needs to be changed? No? 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 Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing no further discussion, resolution classifying the action declaring intent to serve as lead agency for 3185 Route 22, MCC Holdings LLC. Secretary, please call the roll.
Member Valano?
Aye.
Member Sador?
Aye.
Member Roman?
Aye.
Member Holmes?
Aye.
Member LaRobediere?
Aye.
Chairman Courtine.
Aye. This resolution is adopted 6-0 with one absence. All right. We also need to need a motion to set initial escrow in the amount of $5,000, correct?
So moved.
Motion made by Member LaRobediere, seconded by
Second.
Member Holmes. Any discussion? Okay, seeing no discussion, all those in favor of setting initial escrow in the amount of $5,000, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Okay, that motion passes 6-0 with one absence. Okay, the resolution itself referred the application. Secret. Okay, so we can schedule a site visit. Member Holmes, you might be the only member who wouldn't have been at the site because you weren't on the planning board at the time.
I used to visit the site quite often.
Oh, did you? Okay. All right.
No, back when it was the luncheonette and all that years ago, yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, we could schedule the site walk for whomever. I know there's potentially a new planner, and Attorney Lessig maybe wasn't around then. I don't know.
I am happy to go on the site walk if we're
Okay.
going to do it again, but I don't recall having visited this one specifically
Right,
before, but
that's what I'm getting
it's right on Route 22. I took a good look on my way over here today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's up to the planning board. Do we want to have a site walk or not?
I don't want to go to a site walk.
Well, you don't have to go.
I mean, whether
requiring
we want to, I wouldn't go because I'm familiar with the property.
Sure. Okay, I guess it really just comes down to Member Holmes. Do you want to go on a site visit?
No.
No? Okay, so then there doesn't need to be a site walk. That's fine. All right. Anything further with regard to this applicant? No? Okay. All right, then, I guess since there is no site walk, the next step is we're waiting the requisite 30 days to hear about lead agency and...
Yeah, we want to hear back once everything is circulated to all of those involved agencies. I think obviously there's plenty of comments here tonight, you know. Obviously, the applicants can choose how to address them with further submissions, maybe some changes, and all the rest of the sheets too. I know obviously you're reusing some of the old ones, but
Yeah, for the
I'd
county.
like a full set because yeah, we're gonna have to take one look at them before we recommend sending them off. So
Board's policy is typically to get the full set for the county, so.
For full sets or?
How many? That's a Maryland question.
I usually need 4 full sets, and
All right, so the deadline for our September 18th meeting is August 30th. That would probably be the logical next time to meet.
August 30th?
No, the deadline is August 30th for September 18th. Okay, so I guess if you submit all that before the 30th, and you're on the agenda for the 18th.
Perfect.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, board members. Thank you, consultants.
All right, we have a resolution to release escrow. Resolution authorizing release of planning board escrows be resolved that the planning board of the town of Dover does hereby authorize the following planning board escrow be returned to the applicants as set forth below. Applicant CVE Laydown, Muncie, application number SIE 17-106, remaining escrow $10,000. Applicant J&J Lumber Corp., application number SIE 18-109, remaining escrow $500. This resolution is being offered by
Aye.
Member Holmes, seconded by
Second.
Member Little Bedier. Discussion? So the CV laydown, Muncie is now a farm? Right? Okay. And J&J Lumber Corp., they just didn't move forward with, they were proposing a new
Yeah, this
building,
is-
right?
This was site inspection escrows that no site inspections were done.
Okay. Anything further? Okay. Seeing no further discussion, resolution authorizing release of planning board escrows. Secretary, please call the roll.
Member Valano?
Aye.
Member Sador?
Aye.
Member Roman?
Aye.
Member LaRobediere?
Aye.
Member Holmes?
Aye.
Chairman Cortine.
Aye. This resolution is adopted 6-0 with one absence. Okay. So our next scheduled meeting is August 21st, the deadline for which has already passed. What do we have on the agenda for the 21st?
Two subdivisions, Cressy and Birds Hill.
Birds Hill, right? Birds Hill and Cressy, okay. And then for the 18th, our meeting after that, because we wouldn't have a meeting on Labor Day, we are likely going to hear again from 3185 Route 22.
Yep.
And then, didn't we get a request?
Extension for.
We got a request for an extension for
Extension Harlow Valley,
HVH, right? Okay.
but they didn't meet the deadline. And that's the question, do you want them on the agenda for the 21st? If not, they have to wait until the end of September.
Till September 18th,
Yeah,
which would be after
exactly.
their,
Renewal date.
right.
Back of the calendar, that's their fault.
No, I didn't get it until 7 o'clock at night.
It was sent in
Cut
late
off
on that
sitting.
day. So, just, if you could remind the planning board, if the planning board can retroactively extend your approvals?
It depends on the approval. We've done that before with this board and other boards. Obviously, there's a difference between, you didn't have a meeting on Labor Day. Maybe it should have been that Labor Day meeting where the approval should happen versus the approval expired 6 months ago.
Right.
It's
There's a difference between you,
how long is a piece of string, I guess, is the
yeah,
question.
like,
here.
you get it in a little late, so you gotta wait till the next meeting, but then there's a holiday, so it ends up being
Even
late
later.
by that
Yeah.
measure, versus it's been a year and you did nothing and.
Yeah.
Right.
I think we had that a couple of months ago. Somebody had come in, erosion and sediment control, I think, that had expired 6 months
Way too much time
beforehand.
went
It
by or
had been
something.
like, yeah, and at that point, I think we had told him,
Right.
go back, start over again. But obviously, it's the board's prerogative here. You can always approve something nunc pro tunc, but remember too, you're setting a precedent. If you do it months and months out for this person, the next person is going to say you were arbitrary and capricious if you didn't do it for me. So,
Right.
and that's obviously the standard when this board gets sued, and we've been dealing with 2 of those Article 78s already.
Well, I
so.
guess with respect to none of that, but what it makes the most legal sense for the planning board to do? Violate our own deadline and look at this on August 21st, or potentially retroactively approve or reapprove something on September 18th?
I mean, that's the board's prerogative, I would say here. It's less of a legal question. It's just, again, more what the board wants to do. I mean, if you fudge the deadlines a little bit for this person, what happens when the next person wants to?
It's precedent setting,
do that.
I guess, is
Yeah.
what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
What would the planning board like to do? Open up the discussion.
Yes, I mean, whichever is easiest. I think that the point of it being a holiday coming, making it, potentially go back to square one, it just would be, what would be the most expedient for us, for our convenience? Would it be easier to retroactively extend the deadline a day to get the submission in?
Right.
Is it just going to be taking, 15 minutes out of our meeting the next time? That might be the best thing to do for us, for our time slot.
Right, and it's a potential reapproval. It's not as though it's something completely new, and they missed the deadline. We've already approved this. Do we want to reapprove it?
Yeah.
All right, so I'll make a motion that with respect to this application, we waive their deadline to the moment it was submitted to the planning board secretary, and that it will be considered at the August 21st meeting. Seconded by
Second.
Member Rahman. Discussion. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. Okay, that motion passes 6-0 with one absence. So that's when our next meetings are. Before we adjourn, I had asked before the meeting started for our planning secretary, who's also on the code update committee, or I forgot exactly what it's called, to just give us, we had the discussion and our thoughts on the town of Dover's proposed solar law. So just kind of, if you can inform the planning board, just kind of what happened next, please.
The town board reviewed the comments from the planning board. One, they are going to remove the 5 megawatt for the size of a, the chairman has all the recommendations from the planning board, and he's updating the solar law, which will be going to the town board. The town board is scheduling a public hearing at the August 30th meeting. If they have a lot of
They're
comments,
scheduling it for September, one of their September meetings.
August 30th meeting is the public hearing.
Oh, they've already scheduled a public
They've
hearing.
already
Oh, okay, I see.
scheduled it
Okay.
for the August 30th
So there is a public
meeting.
hearing on August 30th.
If in the event they want another public hearing, or they just want to work on it, they may have an extra meeting in September. And that's how they left it.
Yeah, I mean, typically, just with it being budget season, there's usually 2 meetings a month.
You're going to
so
have 2 meetings
Right.
anyway.
For September, October, November. yeah.
Right.
If I may, I think they
Yeah.
also referred it to the county. They made a motion to
They're
allow
wait-
the
yeah, they-
attorney
yeah.
to forward it, and if they got comments back, that would make a decision whether they extended the public hearing.
Okay.
I'm not sure, did the town attorney send it out?
I don't know if
But
Katie
the
got,
motion was if they got the changes back from the committee in time,
Right.
and they set a deadline for that time, that those changes would be forwarded to the county. That
Okay.
was my recollection.
Well, again, I think we all agreed the law made sense in principle. There was just,
right.
just, how about this, how about that sort of stuff. So.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Any further business before the planning board? All right, with that, I'll make a motion to adjourn, seconded by
Second.
Member Sador. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, we're adjourned.